I have been on the longest walk with Una and my feet have never been so tired. Hello everyone, it's me Sarah here to bring you another review. This time we are covering Stephen King's The Long Walk, a dystopian psychological horror film about the human spirit and what humanity is capable of. Before we begin though, please give us a like, share and subscribe to the channel, and that's it. Put on your comfiest shoes and let's go for a walk. A little behind the scenes info, this film was directed by Francis Lawrence, who also directed Catching Fire in the Hunger Games franchise. Albeit the film is far from the sanitised, teen-friendly, battle royale style films, leaning heavily into brutality and some pretty prolific and philosophical dialogue. In a world where time kind of stopped at the end of the 80s and has fallen into a totalitarian, dystopian world. Sounds all too familiar lately. 50 kids join a contest where they walk until the last one is standing, and the winner gets tons of money and a wish granted. The original novel came out just after the end of the Vietnam War, and reflects themes of what many families felt during that time, as they too were sending their young boys overseas to essentially get slaughtered, with promises of riches and heroic patriotism when they returned home. While the film does differ from the source material, it completely captures the terror and suspense of the story, and fleshes these characters out, making them feel just like real people. The beauty that unfolds as these boys grow closer and form a brotherhood with the sudden violent end to many of their lives is harrowing, and there were audible gasps and cries in the audience, including myself, with moments so brutal and heartbreaking that I had to choke back my own tears, but I could not look away either. This itself is a commentary the film makes, as the entire contest is broadcast live to the rest of the nation, with occasional people pulling up a lawn chair along the road to watch in person. But the biggest triumph this film makes is how eerily close to our current reality this film actually gets. How totalitarian regimes and fascism can create these kinds of horrendous circumstances, conditioning people to think that this is normal. The cast is perfect, they all seem to have slid into their roles like a comfortable pair of sneakers, and while sparse, the musical score comes in heavy in key moments to really drum up the emotions. Another interesting fact is that they filmed the entire film in chronological order, and the actors literally walked the entire thing, with breaks of course in between for safety reasons. But due to the nature of how they filmed it, many of the cast didn't know what to expect on following days, and so much of the raw emotion really came through on screen. I know that some select theatres even had a screening where audience members could walk on a treadmill throughout the whole film, and if they stopped for any reason were escorted out, which is kinda crazy if true. Okay, spoilers inbound, I'll give you a moment to skip to the timestamp on screen if you want to avoid any details. Okay, if you're still here, it's time to take a walk with me. The film begins with some text on the screen, an acceptance letter sent to Ray Garrity, thanking him for volunteering for the contest and welcoming him as one of the 50 children chosen in the lottery. We then meet Ray, played by the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, Cooper Hoffman, who is being driven to the start of the race by his mother, and she is absolutely shredded over this, giving us our first indication of what the stakes are. When he gets out of the car and grabs his pack, she falls apart, wrapping her arms around him, screaming and crying for him to change his mind, but it's too late. The opt-out date has come and gone, and he has to do this. They don't go too much into any kind of world lore, but suffice it to say there was a war, and a totalitarian government was instituted where books and music, deemed to be disruptive, were banned by penalty of death. Food shortages were common as was work, and so initially we believe that, like many of the other kids here, Ray's motivations are to win the big money so his family can get out of poverty. Right off the bat though, Ray strikes up a friendship with Petey, played by David Johnson, who you might remember from Alien Romulus, another contestant with a strange scar across his jaw. The two instantly click and even try building some kind of camaraderie with a group of other contestants. We go on to meet Hank Olson, played by Karate Kid legends Ben Wang, Thomas Curley, one of the youngest contestants at only age 14 to 15. Stebbins, who seems to be built for this kind of contest, a tall and muscular physique. Art Baker, a believer in God and good morals, but definitely would like some of that sweet cash money. And Gary Barkovich, played by Charlie Plummer, and he gets off on the wrong foot immediately with everyone by being a defensive and straight up asshole. This is also one of the first major changes from the book to the movie, as the kids have all been sort of aged up for the film to be mostly high school graduates, whereas in the book some of them are as young as 12. Suddenly, a bunch of military jeeps pulls up, followed by a few tank-treaded armoured vehicles, with mounted 50 caliber turrets and heavily armed soldiers. Their uniforms are very much like the green GI jumpsuits the soldiers wore in the army back in the late 70s. Standing tall on the back of the main jeep is of course the Major, played deliciously threatening by Mark Hamill in probably his darkest role since portraying the Trickster back on the 90s Flash TV series. Here we get the big welcoming propaganda speech as well as a summary of the rules for the contest. Everyone must walk at a pace of at least 3 miles an hour. Fall below that speed, you get your first warning. If you have not corrected your error within 10 seconds, you get a second warning. 10 more seconds and you get your third and final warning. After that, your tickets get punched. Also, if you run off the road, try to cheat by hitching a ride on one of the vehicles or having someone carry you, or if you are seen as dissenting and trying to institute some kind of revolution, your ticket also gets punched immediately, no warnings. However, there is one small refuge in the rules. Keep walking for an hour without any further problems and you get a warning removed. They are then assigned numbers. Barkovich gets number 5, Baker is 6, Curley 7, Peter 23, Stebbins 38, Olsen 46 and Garrity is 47. This is the first step in how those in charge try to dehumanise the contestants in case they die, while only the victor will be named on television to promote the patriotism. With the sound of the pistol firing a single shot into the air, the contest has started and everyone begins walking. The first mile or so is filled with some more introductory character moments. We learn that Harkness, a nerdy little bookworm guy who is basically Stephen King himself, is planning to win the contest and publish a novel about it. Parker, on the other hand, is a native kid coming off a reservation looking for the mythological American dream. I'm not quite sure what state they start in, I believe it is Georgia. And well, there's no finish line, but everything along the road looks abandoned. Around mile 5, Barkovich has to take his shoe off to get a rock out, and he gets warned 3 times but manages to catch up just in time. Garrity strikes up an interesting conversation with PT, Art and Olsen, talking about their goals and ambitions for being in this race. He remarks that while it's considered volunteering to be in the contest, every boy across the nation, every single one of them, signs up. None of them have ever met someone who didn't put their name into this lottery. It's been indoctrinated into them that this is the only way to get ahead in life. After all, say you're trapped in a square room with no lights except for the small door, guarded by 3 hungry dogs in one wall, and you're told that that's the only exit. You get so focused on getting through that door, you don't bother to even look for another way out because this just seems so much easier and you believe what you were told. This is basically commentary on the draft during the Vietnam War. But it's also about how more current events, propaganda and disinformation is used to manipulate the general public. Suddenly, Curly gets a Charlie horse and begins slowing down. Garrity grabs him by the arm and pulls him along to keep pace. After all, this kid is like 15 years old, but he can't hold on to him for too long, and at first Curly keeps pace, but then collapses to his knees in pain and frustration, and begins receiving warnings. He screams it's not fair, and a soldier walks up to him, points his rifle, and blows the bottom half of his face clean off.
Ain't fucking fair!
And then the title credits thunder onto the screen. Holy fuck. The moment horrifies Garrity, who almost completely stops walking himself before PT yanks him back forward and tells him to keep walking and not to look. This is the first time it hits any of the contestants that the stakes are life and death. You are not just gonna get a pistol that shoots out a flag that says bang and gets sent home. You are either the winner or you are dead. The Major, on the other hand, gets on the loudspeaker and proclaims this was a great honour. One only the first death and the last can achieve, and that it's a time for celebration, March 4th, for Curly. Garrity calls for a freshwater canteen and does something curious. He touches the nozzle of a soldier's rifle as he walks past. When Petey asks him why he did that, he says it's like knocking on wood. As the miles tick on and the day gets hotter, Ray starts to feel like he won't make it after all. And once again, Petey is there with his bright, sunshining disposition. Man, he's such a beacon in this film. In this little crew that forms, always able to take some sort of negativity and turn it to show some positivity. And the actor is fantastic. Several times over the next few moments, he will rally the boys around him, giving them almost a kind of hope, teaching them to live in the moment and not to worry about the end of the race or what has happened already. Life is all about moments to be experienced, and that's always better with company. They walk through a small dirt poor town, and there's a girl proclaiming her love for Ray with a big cardboard cutout sign. So here's another one of the major changes in the film compared to the book. In the book, his girlfriend is a huge motivation for him to win, but in the film he broke up with her before the race started, and this is the first and last time we see her. Now again, I say motivational, not purpose, because his reasonings for joining the contest and what he wants out of it are very different. Anyway, Petey, Art, Olsen and Ray form the Four Musketeers, and they decide to watch out for each other until the end. This is a very grim idea wrapped in the cloak of a heartwarming moment, because remember, only one winner is at the end, and in order to win, everyone else has to die. However, Barkovich is instantly bothered by this, mostly because he feels left out, and starts hurling slurs and whatnot at them, but Petey easily fires insults back. By the time they hit mile 20, many of them are feeling it, especially Olsen, whose short legs are starting to go rubbery on him, but Petey tells him to stay strong and keep walking. It'll go away. One of the other kids in the back starts having a seizure and drops to the floor shaking, asking for help. Warning from the soldiers get called out before, bang, another one is gone. Barkovich exclaims in great jubilation, with every kid that drops, their odds improve. Along the way are the occasional onlookers, people and sometimes with their own young children, have come out to watch as the contestants walk by, looking bored or curious until someone goes down or a warning is issued. Then all of a sudden it's like they light up and start looking anxiously around to see someone get taken out. It's a disturbing kind of surrealness, because I too, while watching this movie, just keep waiting to see who drops next. But it's not all doom and gloom either, as many of the moments along the journey are filled with hilarious little conversations between the boys about what they're gonna do with the prize money, eating frog legs and snails, and of course, who's got the biggest Johnson, of course. It was at that time that I had to use the bathroom, because drinking a slushie will do that to you, but I'm telling you, I held it into the very end of the film because I was so invested. I didn't want to miss a single thing, but this led me to think these guys can't stop walking, so what are they going to do when it comes to going to the bathroom? And well, I got my answer pretty quickly after that, as PT just turns around, walks backward, whips it out, and lets the hose run. Going number 2, however, happens to one of the unfortunate walkers, as whatever he ate beforehand has given him the runs, and while he tries to keep pace with his pants around his knees and, well, going to the toilet, he just can't keep up and gets hit with a third warning, and then shot to the face. Fuck. Olsen is probably one of my favourite characters in this film so far. He reminds me of Data from the Goonies. He's just a non-stop motor mouth of nerdy facts and complaints. It's so funny. And Ray kind of looks at him like a little brother, even offering the last of his daily rations to him because he's got allergies and couldn't eat most of the other stuff that was provided. Meanwhile, the dickhead Barkovich teases another walker, a young homosexual boy named Rank. He finds a sweet spot that just tips him over the edge, and Rank tries swinging at him, getting his first and second warning for slowing down. Unable to help himself, Barkovich keeps going at him, hurling vile remarks at him until finally Rank just straight up tries to attack him. Seeing full red, Barkovich hops out of the way, still keeping stride with everyone as Rank misses his punch and falls down, scraping his face. In that moment, his third warning is issued, and seconds later, blam, Rank is dead. Immediately, the musketeers call foul, especially R, who straight up yells at Barkovich, naming him a murderer. This does hit Barkovich hard in his conscience, because I don't think he fully realised the weight of what he was doing. To him, this is all still just a game. This shows just how young these contestants are, struggling with the facts of the reality that they are currently in. At about the midpoint of the film, there's a sudden incline in the road, and Ray starts to feel that deep, intense feeling of defeat again. He's tired, even having fallen asleep mid-walk and somehow kept on moving, but mostly because PT has been keeping an eye on him. He mentions he had a dream about his mom, and never realised how much he'd miss her until now. She lives in Freeport, one of the towns they'll be walking through at some point, and PT remarks how he'd like to see her too. Again, Ray struggles to keep pace and gets issued a warning, forcing him to stumble forward until once again defeat starts sinking into his mind. He'd love to see his mum again, but this uphill walk, no way. But fuck that, PT says move your ass, and along with the others, they push each other to make it up that hill. Several warnings go out all around them, various numbers being called, and then the bullets start flying. A walker's head explodes beside Art, then another one gets gunned down, then another and another, kids just being chopped to pieces by bullets. Ray's heart is pounding so loud in his ears it becomes a soundtrack for the scene. But he keeps moving forward, something is driving him, because he even breaks away from PT and storms forward, looking past all the murder, just focused on getting over the hill. Harkness breaks his ankle, but out of pure fear starts running up the hill alongside Ray, crying and desperate. PT catches up and puts his hand on Ray's back, and suddenly it hits him, and he gets a small panic attack before calming down as PT instructs him to pour water over his head and just focus on the sound of the footsteps.
Pete, I didn't mean what I said back there, okay? Forget it. Oh, I owe you, apology. Oh, Pete, I owe you. Sorry. Okay.
My words here don't do the scene justice. It is so raw, so intense, and intentionally upsetting. During the next day's trudge along the road, Harkness just can't. His ankle is swollen, bleeding, and it's just so fucked. And so he has no choice but to stop, begging for his life, begging for some aid, and of course, his ticket is punched. So much for the Stephen King writer character. Olsen isn't doing so well either. He's hit a point where he's also being overcome by his tiredness, and his otherwise usual chatty personality is now just silent, staring at his own feet. At this point, the remaining boys have walked over 100 miles, non-stop, insane. Stebbins coughs and looks a little pale, indicating that he's getting sick, and he's kind of like the Superman of the group. One kid, number 31, just can't deal with it anymore and tries to bolt through a deserted shop along the road they're walking in, and gets gunned down in horrific fashion. There is an uplifting moment in all this though, when the musketeers inspire chant, "Fuck the Major, fuck the walk." While normally this would be seen as revolutionary movement, the Major lets it go, because the boys keep walking and he even chants along with them, telling them all they've got big balls and the biggest balls he's ever seen. Use that hate, conquer the long walk. Olsen, cheered up by this, tells the rest about his wish that he's gonna ask for 10 naked ladies. The boys laugh, PT pointing out that that would be a waste of a wish because he'll be rich, he can just buy 10 naked ladies. He should use the wish for something money can't buy. Art says he's gonna use his wish to go to the moon, get away from all of this. PT says he originally wanted to do something for the people, help them, but in the last few days his wish has changed. He's stated now that he had wished for the long walk to have 2 winners, so that at the end of it all, the friendships made along the way could continue. Ray almost says what he himself would wish for, but then keeps it to himself, only saying that his wish will change things. Petey reminds him though that there's a caveat to the wishes. You can't wish for government reform or any of that stuff, and Ray says that his wish won't do that, but it may inspire such change down the road. We learn about Ray's dad, and he was a kind of revolutionary himself, who would read books to him and play him music from artists like Janis Joplin and such, all which is now illegal in the country. One day, while celebrating his birthday, armed soldiers showed up at his house, dragged his dad outside and gave him a choice to renounce his revolutionary ways, but the father looked at his son and just couldn't bow down, and was executed right in front of Ray. Petey discloses his own past, and his parents have actually died in the war, and he was raised temporarily by an abusive uncle before ending up an orphan on the streets. He was an angry and often troublesome kid, stealing from and fighting with people, until one day he picked a fight with someone he shouldn't have. And that's where he got the scar. When he woke up in the hospital, he realised it wasn't that other guy's fault that he ended up there. It was his own attitude towards life. And since that day, he decided to look at the beauty in the world wherever he went. Olsen pipes up about the gum he's been chewing since the start of the walk, saying that it's a long run out of flavour, but that he has that unshakable feeling that as long as the gum lasts, so will he. But once it's gone, that's it. We've now reached the 3rd day of the walk, mile 144. Art almost gets his ticket punched, having to take a shit himself, but manages to get back in stride, taking the world's fastest crap. Olsen chimes in once again with the 3 truths of the world: a good meal, a good screw, and a good shit. They all laugh. When Petey and Ray find themselves walking alone for a moment, Ray decides to finally tell him what his wish is going to be. He's going to wish for a carbine at the finish line, right there and then, and he's going to shoot the Major. Petey tells him that that's senseless, a waste, because the moment he does that, he'll be killed, and it won't change anything. He goes on into a deeper conversation about changing the hearts and minds, but it will require work and faith in people, not violence. Ray counters that sometimes a spark is needed, a powerful reminder that those in power can't get away with oppression. A hard reminder given recent events in our own world. So it's all out there now. Ray's true motivation for winning is vengeance. Vengeance for his father, for all the boys who've died on the long walk, and all the future boys who might be spared if he can finally end this ritual altogether. Petey ends the conversation by saying moments are what matter. This moment in particular matters, and puts his arm around Ray's shoulder. Will you walk with me for a while?
You ever had Brother Ray?
No. Either have I.
Want to walk with me a while?
Yeah.
I couldn't help it. The first of my tears started to seep out of my eyes. A few more kids are eliminated, some begging for help, some just sinking to their knees and giving in to their fate. One kid loses his mind, strips naked, and runs into a field before being gunned down by the big machine gun turrets, torn to pieces. Art mutters to himself, "I want to go home, Jesus, I want to go home," repeatedly, and puts his arm around Olsen, and the two pick up their pace. There's about 10 of them left now, of the 50 that started. Stebbins is looking really rough. Whatever he's sick with is taking its toll. However, unlike his usual demeanour, he approaches Ray and Petey, and tells them to keep an eye on Olsen because it looks like the little guy is done. Ray goes to try and cheer him up, but Olsen just isn't there anymore. His eyes have kind of glazed over, and any hope he had of winning has drained from him. The gum has lost all flavour. Suddenly, Olsen stops and takes off his hat, turning to face the soldiers. Ray panics and tries to get him to keep walking, receiving warnings himself. One of the soldiers shoots Olsen in the gut after he tried to grab their gun, letting him scream and bleed out on the pavement. Art runs to help him while the rest of the boys shout for him to come back. It's too late. Ray uses his last warning to run and grab Art and pull him to his feet and get back in line. This is the second time this movie has made me cry. We learn from Parker that Olsen was actually married right out of high school, the only one of the kids who had a wife. The remaining boys made a pact, even Barkovich, that whoever wins, they'll use some of the prize money to take care of his widow Clementine. Both Parker and Petey agree that Olsen earned some respect not going out quietly, and Parker says when it's his time, he's taking as many of those soldiers as he can with him. They then break out into a song, singing Clementine in honour of Olsen and his wife. Barkovich walks up next to Ray and unloads his baggage, apologising for his shitty behaviour and for getting Rank killed. He tries to explain that where he comes from, he was always misunderstood and an outsider, and developed this kind of wall around him, where he'd sabotage any kind of relationship just so he wouldn't have to feel rejection. Or like how MJ says in Spider-Man, you can't be disappointed if you expect disappointment. But he can't get the image of Rank being shot dead out of his mind. It's eating him alive. Even Petey attempts to help calm him down, telling him that shit happens, but he needs to keep walking. He's not alone. But Barkovich snaps and walks ahead of the group, turning around to face them and says sorry one last time before jamming a spoon handle into his throat several times, and then getting gunned down. We're down to Stebbins, Ray, Petey, Art and Parker. They approach Freeport where Ray's mom will be waiting on the sidelines to see him. Parker says he's lucky, he's homesick and he misses his family. A rare thing for him to actually admit, as he's usually full of bravado and rage. Stebbins, on the other hand, says that this could potentially be the worst thing to happen to Ray, because seeing his mom will make it all feel more real. Petey looks concerned for his friend, but once again uses his charm and sunny disposition to cheer the group up. As they enter the town, there she is, standing on the sidewalk outside of the library. Garrity had to kick off his shoes because they had fallen apart and his socks were soaked in blood. When his mom sees him, she breaks down, and this starts getting to Ray. He suddenly breaks from the pack and runs over to her, as the warnings are shouted at him, but Petey runs over and grabs him, and pulls him back in line. Ray just keeps screaming, I'm sorry, I'm so fucking sorry, over and over again. It's mile 306 and Parker is at his wit's end. He runs up to one of the soldiers, grabs a gun and guns a few of them down. Another soldier on a different truck fires a few rounds into Parker's stomach, taking him to his knees. The boys walk past, shocked at this display but unable to do anything, and Parker chooses to end his own life, putting the gun to his head before praying in his native tongue and pulling the trigger. Later that night, Art just can't anymore. Blood runs freely from his nose, indicating internal hemorrhaging. Ray and Petey try to hold him up, but he tells them he's going home. He gives Ray his rosary beads and his Holy Cross necklace, asking him to give it to his grandmother at the end of the walk. And the boys say their goodbye, even if Ray tries to convince him to keep walking just a little longer. Art pushes himself away, turns to face the soldiers, and thanks God for the friends he made along the way before being executed. My eyes couldn't hold it back anymore, and once again I felt the sting of tears. With the number having dwindled down to the last 3, we get another change from the book. This time it's Stebbins who ultimately makes the sacrifice, unlike in the book where it's Petey who is the one who actually dies here. Stebbins reveals his reason for joining the walk was so that he could use his wish to be with his father, who just happens to be the Major. Apparently, the Major has a bunch of bastards all around the nation, and this explains why Stebbins looked like a peak athlete at the start, as he's been training his whole life for just the opportunity to even have lunch with his real dad. But there's no way he can make it, and he believes in Ray and Petey, in that they will change the world, and so he wishes them luck and bids them farewell, once again stopping to turn to face the soldiers, and after his 3 warnings, he's put down like any of the other contestants, with no remorse or even acknowledgement by the Major himself. As the last 2 arrive in the next town, there's a huge crowd gathered to cheer them on, just waiting for the final kill and the victory announcement. It's all so absurd and even left a bitter taste in my own mouth. Petey looks at Ray and leaves him with a final lesson about the good things in life, and decides to let Ray win the event, but Ray refuses and pushes Petey ahead of him. He knows that Petey's heart is big and strong and that he really would do a lot of good in the world, and so Ray instead stops and gets his final warning before being shot in the head. The moment the gunshot rings out, Petey turns and screams and cries and runs over to his friend, to his brother, as fireworks go off and the crowd cheers around him. This is the final change from the book. In the novel, Ray actually wins the contest and ends up continuing to walk, even as the Major tries to congratulate him and asks him for his wish. At this point, Ray is pretty much nothing but a shell of a human being running on autopilot, walking till his body literally falls apart. However, in the film, Petey uses his wish to get a carbine and shoots the Major. The moment he does this, the crowd and the entire world around him goes quiet, grows dark. Petey lays the gun down, turns and continues to walk. Now, there are different interpretations of what this ending means. In my opinion, I believe that after he shot the Major, he himself was shot as well, and the last walk into the darkness was him peacefully moving on into death. My friend, however, thinks this means it was all in his head, like one of those "it was all a dream" kind of things, which I think would actually ruin the rest of the film. And that is that. What an emotionally draining film, but it was so worth it. I'm going to come right out and say it, this film gets a 9.5 out of 10, and the only reason I subtract any points was because I didn't really like how ambiguous the ending was. Other than that, it was a spectacular adaptation of the novel, even with the changes which I actually think improved the story, and brought much needed heart to an otherwise utterly bleak tale. Before it released, I was definitely excited to see it. It's a Stephen King film after all, and we're all getting a lot of King this year, which releases such as The Life of Chuck, The Institute, and coming up, Welcome to Derry. But how could a film about a bunch of boys just walking and talking be any good? Well, it exceeded my expectations, and it's definitely one of my top 10 films of this year, maybe even being the best film of the year. If this film doesn't get some awards or recognition, then I call foul, because these performances were so real and so raw, and the story itself is hugely socially and politically relevant these days, that it shouldn't be overlooked. I highly recommend checking this out in theatres, especially with a group of your own friends to go with, but just make sure to bring some comfort snacks to keep those spirits up. I want to thank you all for checking out the video. What did you think of the film? Have you read the novel? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed our content, please like, share and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to stomp that bell icon to stay up to date with all our latest releases. I have been your host Sarah, and thank you for being here with me today. Have a beautiful day and take care. Goodbye.
Wow.